Sri Ganeshaya Namaha, Sri Saraswatye Namaha, Sri Padavallabha Narasimha Saraswati, Sri Guru Dattatreya Namaha. Dattatreya Mahatmanam Varadam Bhaktavatsalam Prapannartiharam Vande Smartrugami Sanovatu Deenabandhum Kripasindhum Sarvakaranakaranam Sarvarakshakaram Vande Smartrugami Sanovatu Sharanagata Deenartha Paritrana Parayanam Narayanam Vibhum Vande Smartrugami Sanovatu Sarvanarthaharam Devam Sarvamangalamangalam Sarvakleshaharam Vande Smartrugami Sanovatu Brahmanyam Dharma Tattvajnam Bhakta Kirti Vivardhanam Bhaktabhishta-pradam Vande Smartrugami Sanovatu Shoshanam Papa Pankasya Deepanam Jnana Tejasa Tapa-prashamanam Vande Smartrugami Sanovatu Sarvaroga Prashamanam Sarvapida Nivaranam Vipaduddharanam Vande Smartrugami Sanovatu Janma Samsara Bandhagnam Swarupanandadayakam Nishreyasapadam Vande Smartrugami Sanovatu Jayanamaya Shakkama Dhatur Dattasya Stavam Bhoga Moksha Pradasyemam Prapatet Sakri Bhavet Sri Ganeshaya Namaha, Sri Saraswatye Namaha, Sri Padavallabha Narasimha Saraswati, Sri Guru Dattatreya Namaha.
Once, when he had gone to have darshan of the Lord, being unable to control his mind, he asked the Lord, "Why do people undergo sufferings like the Maghasnana? Do you consider them useful?" The Lord, residing in the hearts of all, praised the eminence of Maghasnana in various ways and said that there was nothing more meritorious than Maghasnana, and he added that it was a commendable rite and any number of yoga exercises could not equal it. Maghasnana is bathing in the month of Magha. Then he described in detail the importance of places of pilgrimage and of pilgrimage itself and the greatness of Prayaga, Allahabad, and the rewards obtained by giving gifts and by worshipping deities. The emperor was filled with surprise. He could not understand the Lord's ways, yet because it was his Guru's command, he encouraged his subjects to observe all the religious rites. Kartaveerya continued to reign as usual. The Maharshis were glad that he was ruling righteously, and nothing else bothered them. But his autocracy was considered an insult by the Devatas. He would sit in the celestial chariot given by Lord Dattatreya, and without any regard he would enter even the celestial worlds for his amusement. This was unbearable to the Devatas, who felt he did it deliberately to insult them. With such actions, all of them became angry at the emperor. Moral instruction. On a certain occasion, in the court of Emperor Kartaveerya, Brahmins were praised by the ministers and priests. That day the emperor, without caring for the decorum or dignity to be observed in an assembly, stood up impatiently and began to speak with anger. All the courtiers were surprised, as they had not until then heard him speak like that. Not only that, Kartaveerya also said directly, with a wild expression on his face, that there was no one equal to him in this world in both punishing and favoring anyone. The courtiers stood dumbfounded with great fear. At that time, the wind god, having decided that nothing could happen to him, appeared in the court hall and said sharply, "What did you say there? That there is none equal to you in this world? Is not Narayana the Lord of all the 14 worlds? Did he not declare that he has taken shelter under Brahmin's feet? What kind of talk is this? Be careful not to utter such words in future. Human beings are born for a few days stay here on earth, without much knowledge or understanding." When he heard these words devoid of even a little respect, the emperor became furious and yelled at him. But without paying any attention to him, the wind god continued, "Even if you do not respect the Brahmins, you realize the greatness of Bhrigu, Vasishtha, and Kashyapa at least. Have you heard about Agastya and the esteemed Atri? Is it not by the blessings of Dattatreya, the Lord of Lords and son of that Brahmarshi, who is proud to be called after his father, Atri, that your crooked hands and arms became straight? You seem to have forgotten that." At the mere mention of Lord Dattatreya's name, the emperor's anger cooled off like a piece of glowing charcoal dipped in cold water. The abuse and disrespect in his words became clear to him now, and he felt ashamed of himself. The wind god continued, "What is the use of blaming you? Lord Dattatreya is the root cause for your arrogance. He has conferred the emperorship of the Yoga Empire on you. Lord Dattatreya did so much for you, but your conceit about being a yogi and an ascetic has crossed the sky. O Emperor, I wish you well. I am telling you all this because you have prayed to Lord Dattatreya to advise you whenever you go astray. From the beginningless time there is no king who ruled without the Brahmin's aid. You attained this proud status only by the grace of Lord Dattatreya. Do not make the Lord feel ashamed of you by stooping so low and maligning others." Rising from the throne, folding his hands and bowing down, Kartaveerya humbly said, "O wind god, by your grace I have realized my error. Reverently acting according to your command, I shall exercise vigilance so that such an error is not repeated." These words plunged the court in even greater surprise. The courtiers congratulated him, thinking, "There is no greater valor than acknowledging a mistake. That is why he has become such an extraordinary emperor." The wind god blessed the emperor and disappeared. Thereafter, Kartaveerya was vigilant for a long period. But to what avail is vigilance in the face of destiny? God's test. One day at noon, after finishing the daily offering to all gods, when Emperor Kartaveerya was waiting for a guest, a Brahmin shining like fire came in. That Brahmin with gold earrings, who was bent under the weight of old age and asceticism, had a destitute expression on his face due to unknown reasons. As soon as he came in, he held out the corner of his upper garment and begged, "O Lord, gratify my hunger." Here is a Brahmin who has come at the time of the daily offering to all gods. Moreover, he is crying with hunger. Thinking thus, the emperor became a little suspicious at first. He told himself, "But then, why should I hesitate? Why fear?" With a smile he said, "Eat as much as you want. Eat to your satisfaction." The Brahmin replied, "Sir, my hunger is very great. Grant me all the grass, creepers and trees on the earth as food. That is enough." Emperor Kartaveerya was startled. Then suddenly he realized that it was Agnideva who was before him in the guise of a Brahmin. The emperor laughed to himself. The Devatas seemed to be using the fire god for a plot by sending him to me. But let them know that Kartaveerya is neither jealous of Devatas nor afraid of them. That itself will be their defeat. Thinking thus, the emperor turned towards the Brahmin and looking at him with derision said, "We have already told you to eat as much as you want. We shall protect you. No one will obstruct you. Afterwards, Report your satisfaction to all of your companions." Agnideva did not seem to take any notice of the allusion in Kartaveerya's words. Forthwith he began his work. In a short time, all the great trees, creepers, grasses, and seeds in the world went up in a blaze, and heaps of ashes were left everywhere. The areas where big trees and great woods had spread were now a ghastly sight, and the roots in the earth were turned to charcoal. The entire earth was burnt and appeared to be weeping. People everywhere, seeing this terrible disaster, were shocked and despondent. The ascetics who lived on roots in the forests were distressed and upset at this disaster, and the ascetics in the 7 islands, full of despair, were doing the pranayama ritual. The emperor, who had looked after his subjects as his children, had only the satisfaction of keeping up his promise, but he did not notice the agitation of the Brahmins. The cries of the people and of all living beings did not fall on his ears. The wails and grief of men and animals did not reach his heart. The play of destiny did not stop there. The cries of lamentation disturbed Maharshi Vasishtha, who was immersed in samadhi on the bank of the Sarayu river. When the Maharshi opened his eyes, he saw before him heaps of ashes from the burnt tapovanams and disciples who were misery personified. The word Shanti, peace, came out of the Maharshi's mouth, and yet on this day the Maharshi became angry beyond limits. He suddenly had a vision of Agnideva moving with the speed of an arrow, burning all kinds of trees on the earth, and of Kartaveeryarjuna, who was following Agnideva, holding a bow and arrows in his hand. The Maharshi immediately understood the situation. On seeing Kartaveeryarjuna's face, which was blazing with rajas, the anger of that emperor among munis swelled. "You mean emperor," he called. "So this is your work? What a great donor you have become, giving away the property of your people. Has your power gone to your head? You may be 1,000-armed now, but even if you have forgotten that your arms were crippled before, the world remembers it. Your ruin is approaching fast. You do not yet know the might of Brahmins. You will understand it on the day you die at the hand of a Brahmin. At that time, these 1,000 arms of yours will become helpless again and fall down like withered leaves." The Maharshi's rage and curse echoed in all the 10 directions. The Muni's curse also reverberated in the imperial court. On hearing this, the emperor's face became pale, and he remained motionless for a while. Gradually, a smile appeared on his face. He said, "All of us should observe and learn from the Brahmins to conquer lust and anger, develop sattva and devotion to the self. We, however, are Kshatriyas. As emperors, Rajas is as much our nature as is Dharma. Along with infinite power being blessed by Lord Dattatreya, we have a little wisdom also. It is an insult to us if we curse this Brahmin in return. Let him live in peace." The entire court was plunged into commotion when it heard the emperor talk so lightly of Maharshi Vasishtha. In due course, as time passed, the citizens forgot the episode of the curse, but Kartaveerya had not taken it seriously from the beginning. Previous birth. Kartaveerya's practice of yoga and his reign continued as usual. Then one day he had to go to heaven in the celestial chariot given to him by Lord Dattatreya. On the way, for the sake of amusement, he had the chariot pass through Nandanavana, the park of the celestial beings. There Kartaveerya saw Devendra, whom he imagined to be in the celestial court Sudharma, rocking in a swing with Shachi Devi. The sight of Devendra, who was absorbed in entertaining his wife as though he were newly married, caused much disgust to Emperor Kartaveerya. He thought, after performing much penance, he has only attained this state, after having been in the company of many great souls. Yet his infatuation for the sense organs is not destroyed. Of what avail are all his efforts? Here was the ruler of the three worlds with his beloved wife by his side. It did not occur to Kartaveerya that he was just an ordinary mortal, and however mighty he might be, he was inferior to Devendra, both in status and age. Devendra felt as though he had been hit, and that too in front of his wife. He went straight to Vaikuntha, where Lord Vishnu was holding court with devatas and sages in attendance. Devendra described the disrespectful behavior of Kartaveerya and the latest insults heaped upon him, and prayed to Lord Vishnu to attend to Kartaveerya's affair at once. Many among the courtiers had at one time or other suffered some insult from Kartaveerya. Therefore, they also narrated their experiences and supported Devendra's case. The rishis also added, "He has been ruling the empire excellently. By your grace, he has attained accomplishment in yoga also. But he is unable to control the arrogance rising in him. Even the elders he treats with contempt. Therefore, he is unable to keep under control thousands of insolent Kshatriya youths under his tutelage, to whom he has given away all the subordinate states. More than by him, it is by these followers that the people are being tormented." On hearing the words of the divine rishis, Lord Vishnu began to speak with majesty thus: "O honorable ones, the world will know once again how difficult it is to overcome past innate tendencies. All the sadhakas should listen to this episode and understand how much vigilance they should exercise in the matter of vanity. In his previous birth, he was our intimate attendant, Sudarshana Chakra, the discus in the hand of Lord Vishnu. Once Sudarshana became jealous of us, thinking that on account of his might alone that we destroyed the demons, but we had taken all the credit for it. With the feeling that if warned in the beginning he would understand his mistakes, we called him to us and said with irony, "Sudarshana, I have been thinking of what would have happened to me if you had not been with me. I owe everything to you." Hearing this, instead of grasping its significance, he smiled proudly. He was no doubt intelligent, but conceit had clouded his intellect. Then, concluding that only a painful lesson could correct him, we invoked anger and cursed him. "You have become insolent due to your power. Therefore be born with crippled arms." When Sudarshana realized his mistake, he fell upon our feet penitently, and we consoled him, saying, "Do not fear. You will certainly be my devotee in the next birth. At last, you have a chance then, through vigilant practice, to overcome your arrogance." This Sudarshana is now Kartaveerya. He is struggling to overcome his arrogance. Destruction of his arrogance and the end of his present birth will take place simultaneously in a short time. Be patient, and you will see. Comforting the devatas in this manner, Lord Vishnu sent them away. In the meanwhile, Kartaveerya finished his work in heaven and left again. However mighty a person may be, his destiny will pursue him and be fulfilled. Seizure of cow. Once, The emperor had to go to war with his army comprising of elephants, chariots, cavalry, and infantry. While he was returning after an easy victory, he saw on the way the ashram of Maharshi Jamadagni. As he had heard that Maharshi Jamadagni was not an ordinary rishi, but was verily Jwaladagni, blazing fire, he thought it would be well to have his darshan. Leaving his armed forces at a distance and taking a few confidants, he walked into the ashram barefooted and after darshan prostrated to the Maharshi and inquired politely after his welfare. Pleased by the emperor's humble behavior, the Maharshi received him with great honor, and having the emperor sit before him on the seat made of darbha grass, entertained him with many pleasant stories. After conversing for a short while, Jamadagni said, "O Maharaja, please accept our hospitality today and resume your journey tomorrow." A smile appeared on the emperor's face. He thought, "This is the way these Brahmins boast. He himself has nothing to eat, and he is inviting me to a feast. There is simplicity on the surface, but vanity within." Yet, with assumed politeness, he said, "Munindra, your words have been a feast to us. We are satisfied by your darshan. Give us permission to leave." However, Jamadagni insisted, "Maharaja, you are a dharmatma, a man of righteousness. We who live in forests seldom have guests, and guests like you are a great event for us. Consider this as your own house and stay on, please." "But there is a big retinue with us." The emperor was about to proceed further when the sage compelled again, saying, "What is the problem? Maharaja, I am inviting you and your whole entourage. Do not refuse." The emperor's doubts increased, but he agreed. "It looks as if this Brahmin is intent on showing me the power of his penance," he thought. The Maharshi's face beamed with joy, and he called loudly, "Mother Surabhi!" The king thought that he was calling some girl of the ashram, but there came a beautiful brown cow, clanking its tiny bells. It had a fully developed shining body, large eyes, even built, half-bent horns, smooth skin, a broad neck, and big udder, in short, a pleasant sight. When the cow, as though it was the sage's daughter, came near him full of affection, he caressed it and said, "Look here, mother, the emperor has come with his retinue. Such good fortune will never come our way again. You should make all arrangements needed." Shaking her head slowly, Surabhi went away. The emperor was struck with wonder when he saw the exquisite hospitality that was extended to him and his entourage. It would take too long to describe the arrangements that were made. There is an expression which defines such extravagant hospitality in just 2 words, Bharadwaja's hospitality. It is an event that took place at another time, which has been described by the great poet Valmiki. But Jamadagni's hospitality exceeded even Bharadwaja's hospitality. Intoxicated by the great hospitality, that delightful service, and the exquisite enjoyments provided, the retinue, forgetting themselves, began to extol the Maharshi in the very presence of the emperor. Some said, "If such luxury can be had in an ashram, why all the efforts in service of the emperor?" Others exclaimed, "This is real grandeur." A few remarked, "Never have we seen or experienced such magnificence until now." Some educated ones exclaimed, "These Brahmins are highly revered by all, because, commanding such luxury, they have renounced it, are engaged in austerities in these forests, living on roots and bulbous plants only. The praises of the retinue were insults to the emperor, and his mind became confused and upset. At last he came to the conclusion, thinking that all this is due to the power of the sage's tapas, they are impressed and misled. In fact, it is the power of Surabhi the cow. Somehow Jamadagni has caught hold of it. If I take it away from him stealthily, then his trick will be exposed. Surely Jamadagni will be proud now after this victory. But when he saw him, he appeared supremely serene and respectful, and he talked to Kartaveerya with great joy. If the seed of poison is sown in the mind, one does not see the merits in others. Every act of the Maharshi seemed to the emperor to be an act of disrespect. Talking to the Maharshi, Kartaveerya said, "Your cow is a gem among cows. It would be appropriate if such a miraculous cow were to belong to me." The Maharshi looked at the emperor with bewilderment. "I am not free to gift it, even if the emperor himself wishes for it." The Maharshi had not yet finished when Kartaveerya interrupted him. "Maharshi, did you think that we wanted your property for nothing? We shall give you twice as much as you may demand, and in addition we shall give you 1,000 cows." The king's words were full of arrogance. "O Emperor, how can I be free to sell it when I am not free even to gift it? Are you teaching Brahmins to sell their cows?" The Maharshi replied with these piercing words, "This cow is invaluable. Besides, she is like my daughter, sister, and mother. Not only to me, she is the mother of our ashram. Because it is the duty of a Brahmin to tell you what is good for you, I must admonish you. Do not get angry. You are going in the wrong direction. Turn around before it is too late." These words pierced Kartaveerya's heart. The emperor could not bear this criticism, especially in front of his soldiers. It was as though his own people had spat on him. On the other hand, his conscience was pricking him that what he was doing was wrong. This good reputation was lost, and he had gone too far already. He had become an object of ridicule in the presence of his own soldiers. The emperor felt as though some madness or an evil spirit had taken possession of him. "A Brahmin!" Angrily he shouted, "You transgressed the limits of respect. All precious things in the empire belong to the emperor. Raja Ratnasva Bhajanam. Therefore, we are taking the cow with us. Yet, we have given respect to you, proud and obstinate, through the power of penance. You have forgotten yourself and spoken disrespectfully to us. Therefore, you are liable for punishment for the offense of defying the emperor. Yet, it is not our tradition to punish forest dwellers. Be glad you are still alive. Now, do not obstruct us and invite danger to your life." All the soldiers began to tremble on seeing the emperor screaming like a wild elephant. All the ashramites were scared and dumbfounded. Only the Maharshi remained unruffled and profoundly serene. The emperor ordered his servants to go and drag the cow and bring it before him. The servants immediately tried to carry out the emperor's command, but Surabhi did not yield to their force. She came to the Maharshi and stood before him, looking at him helplessly. When the Maharshi looked at his cow, which had never worn a rope around her neck, standing so sadly before him, it was hard for him not to cry. Stroking her gently, he said, "Mother, you must go. Oh, Mother, I cannot see you suffering. Wherever you are, be happy. May auspiciousness be with you." Hearing these words, Surabhi bent her head. Now she did not resist and helplessly went with the emperor's followers with tears in her eyes. On seeing tears in the cow's eyes, the emperor's heart began to sink. He was disgusted with himself, and for a moment he felt like returning the cow. He thought, "We have shown our might. Is it not enough? What a sin I have committed!" His mind was confused, yet his arrogance won. Carrying the cow with him, the emperor departed with his entourage. As though all this was due to their own prowess, the soldiers proceeded with enthusiasm, dragging the cow with them. While this tumultuous incident took place, Parashurama, the youngest son of Maharshi Jamadagni, was away from the ashram on some work. It was very late when he returned after collecting fuel, fruits, kusha grass, and other things. Everything appeared strange to him when he reached the ashram. Helplessness and sadness was on the face of all the ashramites. Surabhi did not approach him as usual. Though the father was absorbed in deep samadhi, his face lacked the usual brightness. Then his elder brothers came and told him all that had happened during his absence. Parashurama's eyes became red with fury like glowing embers. Parashurama's eyes became red with fury like glowing embers. His axe still resting on his shoulder, he took his bow and arrows and other weapons, bowed mentally to his father, and off he ran like a hurricane along the paths in the forest. When Emperor Kartaveerya entered the capital in the midst of jubilant victory celebrations, he was deeply engrossed in thought. What I did was a big mistake. There is no doubt about it. Whatever I may do now, spiritedly will be futile, like constructing a bridge after the river has dried up. Certainly I gave way to vanity, and stooping low committed this sin. Committing a sin and then trying to escape from punishment is another big mistake. The least cowardice should not touch me. Thinking thus, he awaited the punishment that was sure to come. He invited the retribution due to him. Salvation. Just when Emperor Kartaveerya was about to enter the city absorbed in thought, he heard a call resembling the roar of a lion. "Hey, Kshatriya kinsman, stop!" The emperor whirled around instantaneously. He saw before him a strange man looking like a Kshatriya in a Brahmin's guise. Round his waist were barks of trees. On his head, a braid of matted hairs, vibhuti lines on his forehead, and the sacred thread over the shoulder. In his hands he held a bow and arrows. Upon one shoulder rested a lance and axe on the other. His nostrils were quivering and his fierce eyes fiery with rage. He looked like a volcano just about to explode. On beholding this personification of anger, even Kartaveeryarjuna experienced a tremor in his back and trembled. Before the emperor could say anything, the man roared again. "Hey, you mean Kshatriya! I am Rama, son of Jamadagni and friend of Jwaladagni. I am only a destitute Brahmin, and I have come alone. There is my axe, and here is my bow. Now, will you release our cow, or do you want to lose your life? The choice is yours." The emperor remained silent when he heard these words. This man in front of him looked like the synthesis of idam kshatram, idam brahmyam. This power is Kshatriyas, this might is Brahmanas. He was like a forest conflagration. From every pore of his skin, power leaped out like flames of fire. Whoever he may be, it does not matter to me, he thought. I am a Kshatriya. Someone has come and by insulting me is challenging me to fight. The only duty of Kshatriya now is to accept this challenge and fight. Instantly, the furious emperor directed his four-limbed army against Parashurama. Like an army of moths rushing into the blazing fire, they attacked him, but it was not long before they fell down as if reduced to ashes. Kartaveerya was stupefied. Who is he? He wondered. When did he take out the arrows? When did he set the arrow in the bow? When did he aim? It went so fast, and how could he defeat so many as if he were juggling? Even Indra was no match for this Rama. There is no doubt. He is my equal. Now I understand that even the death sentence is a small punishment for the big sin I have committed. Otherwise, how could this happen? Am I indeed the unquestioned emperor of Saptadvipa? Am I really the experienced ruler who has governed for 85,000 years? Am I the superior ruler who appeared with drawn sword before anyone in my empire who only thought of committing a wrong and punished him? How could I, worse than a robber, rob a poor Brahmin of his cow? There is no punishment other than death for this. Lord Datta has blessed me with the boon that I will not die at the hands of anyone who is not equal to me. He himself has blessed me with such supreme valor which even the gods and their ruler do not possess. Then how can death come to me? If someone like me can be the Lord's disciple, it is an insult to the tradition of disciples. That is why I must and should die. That is why the Lord has sent this Rama who is equal to me. How many thousands of times have I experienced the Lord's limitless compassion? The Lord might certainly feel disgust even to remember me having committed this awful sin, knowing that if death does not come to me now, I will have to die every day, suffering from shame and grief because of my sin. Out of compassion, the Lord has awarded the death sentence to me now by sending a hero who can match me, and thereby he is destroying my sin in this birth itself. Therefore, I should see that this sentence is executed. Even now, if I admit my fault and return the cow, that matchless Brahmin, disregarding all that I have done, will not only forgive me, but also bless me before going away. I can see such eminence in him, as in his noble father, who is like fire covered by ashes. Self-restraint is his real strength, which I was not able to realize. That is why this Brahmin had to assume this role of a mighty warrior. It is my duty now to taunt and inflame him, even more so that I receive my just punishment. May my Gurudeva bless me. The moment he had made up his mind, the emperor became terrible like Rudra at the time of the universal destruction. He invoked his 1,000 arms, and taking 1,000 bows, he began to shower arrows on Parashurama. Parashurama was startled by this sudden attack. He wondered whether the person now before him was the same Kartaveerya. Parashurama showered Kartaveerya with a hailstorm of sharp arrows, but he stood still like a statue of stone. The next moment, Kartaveerya emerged like a ball of fire. The fighting took a serious turn as Parashurama was inspired by Kartaveerya's valor, whose 5,000 arrows were cut by Parashurama. To defend himself against Parashurama's attack, Kartaveerya wounded Parashurama and made him swoon many times. But lo, recovering again, Parashurama cut off Kartaveerya's hands, which reappeared faster than lightning. Amazed at this mysterious replacement of hands, Parashurama lifted his deadly axe and hacked off Kartaveerya's hands and returned to his place. Kartaveerya swooned, and by Datta's grace, another 1,000 hands appeared. This phenomenon was repeated several times. Parashurama used his Brahmastra weapon first, and then with his Parashu axe severed the powerful arms which kept reappearing. When Kartaveerya's hands stopped reappearing at last, he was not in the least disheartened. He humbled Parashurama and wounded him with various other weapons like mace, swords, and trident. Parashurama yelled in great frenzy. At that point, Kartaveerya had reached his goal. His mind had merged in the holy feet of Lord Datta, and he lay unconscious. Then Parashurama, remembering Parameshwara, severed Kartaveerya's head. There was a shower of flowers from the angels. Thus Kartaveerya had attained liberation while in the body, and now, after leaving the body, his life forces merged in the infinite. The 5 vital breaths in him rejoined the elements. The elements of life in the gross and subtle bodies merged in their causes. At the same time, Sadguru Datta was in a deep trance in the cave of Sahyadri. There was the cow Surabhi in the battlefield. With tears in her eyes, she ran towards Parashurama, who, with intense emotion and with tears of joy flowing down his cheeks, pacified the anxious cow in various ways and took her with him. Thus ended the life of mighty Kartaveeryarjuna after a glorious lifespan of 80,000 years. No other devotee received Datta's grace so abundantly. Through Datta's grace, Kartaveerya rose from the lowest state to the highest. While alive, he shone like the sun at noon, yet he committed some mistakes but corrected himself. He never disrespected his Guru even in a dream. His faith in his Guru was absolutely steadfast. That is why Lord Datta did not consider his weaknesses as serious. The Lord subjected him to the severest of tests, which in due course only contributed to Kartaveerya's stupendous rise. Ultimately, he attained eternal glory and Kaivalya, absolute unity with the Supreme. Every incident in the life of this great devotee shows how an aspirant should conduct himself towards the Sadguru. His life demonstrates the nature of an ideal devotee. It shows how, in return, the grace of the Sadguru flows towards him. Here ends the story of Kartaveerya. Kartaveerya was a close disciple of Lord Dattatreya. Even though Lord Datta is considered to be beyond likes and dislikes, why should he not show his anger towards Parashurama, who had cast off peace, characteristic of Brahmins, and nurtured hatred? But the wonder was that Parashurama voluntarily caught hold of the Lord's feet and became his disciple, and the Lord showed him more consideration than he showed to Kartaveerya. To understand even a little of the power and greatness of this ancient Purusha, it is necessary to know what happened after Kartaveerya's death. Parashurama returned with the cow Surabhi. The news of the slaying of Kartaveerya spread like wildfire in the city, and many bemoaned his death. The Yuvaraja was installed and crowned. After all, this is the way of the world. However, the descendants of the Kshatriya race could not digest this slaying of the emperor by an ordinary Brahmin, and they were in a state of severe shock and distress. The descendants of the chieftains of Kartaveerya's clan and youths loyal to them planned revenge and retaliation. Flames of revenge on Brahmins were raging in their heart. Was it not the fault of these arrogant intellectual Brahmins? The root cause was the sage Jamadagni, the father of Parashurama. Therefore, they decided to put an end to the life of sage Jamadagni. But who should kill him? Nobody dared to risk his life, because facing Parashurama was like facing a lion. The only way to kill the sage was by a ruse, and this would only be possible when Jamadagni was alone in his hermitage. The background of Jamadagni is told in the following story. Brahminism and Kshatriya. The city of Kanyakubja on the banks of the river Ganga was ruled by a king called Gadhi, who adopted the life of a Brahmin and lived in a forest with his queen. A daughter named Satyavati was born to them. She grew up into a beautiful young maiden of great qualities. Ruchika, son of the Rishi Bhrigu, saw this beautiful girl and wanted to have her as his wife. Ruchika was not aware of the code of conduct of how to approach her appropriately. Therefore, he directly approached King Gadhi and asked him to give him his daughter in marriage. The king hesitated to agree to Ruchika's request, as he was dwarf. Instead of refusing directly, he made a condition and said, "Fetch me 1,000 beautiful white horses, but one of the ears of each horse must be black." "Is that all?" said the bachelor with a smile. The king observed that Ruchika, the dwarf Brahmin, meditated upon Lord Varuna, who appeared and blessed Ruchika with 1,000 horses from out of the river Ganga. Now, with this condition fulfilled, the king married his daughter Satyavati to Ruchika. The spot in the river Ganga from where the horses came is called Ashwatirtha. Bhrigu Muni, Ruchika's father, heard the news of the wedding and came to spend a few days with his son, who was now a householder who had married a king's daughter. After seeing the virtues and nobility of his daughter-in-law, Bhrigu, pleased with her service, offered a boon to her. Satyavati thought for a while and then asked her father-in-law to bless her with a son, and her mother also with a son. "She is very attached to her mother," thought Bhrigu. Then the sage materialized 2 silver vessels containing payasam, a sweet liquid, and giving some to Satyavati, he said, "After your daily ablutions, consume this liquid and embrace an audumbara tree and meditate on Lord Shiva. Let your mother consume the liquid in the other vessel and do likewise. But remember, do not mix up the silver vessels. Be cautious and follow my advice carefully." Then the Maharshi disappeared. Elated, Satyavati told everything to her mother, who thought, "This Rishi is not fair. He gave 2 different vessels and pointed out which is to be used by whom. Certainly he has favored his daughter-in-law, and he wants his grandson to be more famous than my son." Thus her crooked mind started working. The mother took her bath early in the morning and interchanged the silver vessels so that she consumed the one meant for Satyavati. Later the daughter consumed the other, being too innocent to suspect this ruse. Some time elapsed, and soon both conceived. Sage Bhrigu came to see his daughter-in-law, who was pregnant. When he saw that a child with Kshatriya characteristics was growing in the womb of his daughter-in-law, he was surprised. He could see everything that had happened and was filled with sympathy for his daughter-in-law. He said, "My daughter, did I not warn you to be careful? Your mother has deceived you. She has consumed the liquid meant for you. The liquid meant for her was intended to make a child of Rajasic nature to rule the kingdom, and you have consumed that liquid. Therefore, the child to be born to you will be a Brahmin by birth only, but will possess a terrible Kshatriya nature." Shedding tears and lamenting, Satyavati fell at her father-in-law's feet and begged, "I do not want my son to be a Kshatriya. Your powers of penance are unchallenged. Please transfer the Kshatriya characteristics to my grandson and make my son a true Brahmin with good conduct." Bhrigu, moved by the pitiable look of his daughter-in-law, as well as her devotion and virtue, acceded to her request. After some time, Jamadagni was born to Satyavati, while her mother gave birth to Vishwamitra. Young Jamadagni mastered the 4 Vedas and all Shastras at an early age. He became well versed in Dhanurveda, knowledge of archery, as there was a slight Kshatriya tendency in him. Later he became a great tapasvin and, like his father, married Renuka Devi, daughter of King Prasannajit. Jamadagni led an austere life with Renuka Devi. 5 sons, Vasumanta, Sushena, Vasu, Vishwavasu and Rama, were born to them. The whole family of Rishi Jamadagni was devoted to a life of penance. Penance was everything to them. One day, all the children went to the forest to fetch fruits and sacrificial wood, and Renuka Devi proceeded to bathe in the river Ganga. At that time, King Chitraratha, ruler of Martikavata, had come to the river with his harem for sporting. The whole retinue of the ruler was merry and enjoyed the waters. The scene was so exciting that Renuka Devi thought to herself, "It seems that the Kshatriyas have more fun and enjoyments compared to the austere and dull life of Brahmins." Thus she was lost in her thoughts for quite some time. Suddenly she realized the sinful aspect of her thoughts and was ashamed and even disgusted with herself and shuddered. What would my husband think of my lapse? She bathed in a hurry, but was very late when she returned with her pot of water. She was scared and hesitant to approach Jamadagni, who could see her weakness written on her pale face. When he came to know all that had happened, he scolded her. In fact, he was mad with rage because she had indulged in such mean thoughts after having been his companion for so long, having led a life of austerities and becoming the mother of his 5 children. Just then his 4 elder sons came home. As soon as he saw them, he said furiously, "Cut off the head of this sinful woman." The sons could not understand what the Maharshi meant. They could neither raise their hands to commit matricide nor bear the wrath of their father. The Maharshi's anger soared to the sky. He asked each son separately, but in vain. Now Jamadagni's anger turned against the children. He cursed them. "Shame upon you all! You have ignored my orders, and you are standing there dumb like animals. Therefore, you shall be born as dumb animals of the lowest nature." No sooner had Jamadagni uttered this curse than Rama, the youngest son, appeared, who carried a sharp and shining axe on his right shoulder. He heard his father's roaring command, "She is a sinner! Cut off her head now!" Rama instantly obeyed, and the bloody head of Renuka Devi fell to the ground. Jamadagni shivered for a moment, but the next moment he regained composure and appreciated Rama's instant action. He hugged the son and said, "Rama, you have obediently carried out my order. Your elder brothers hesitated to do so, and therefore they have committed the worst sin of all. Ask me now for as many boons as you wish, and I shall grant them." Slowly Parashurama said, "Father, no doubt did our mother commit a sin, yet she is my mother. She must come back to life again. By the power of your penance, may all her sins be burnt up, and may she become purer than before, not remembering her past. Also, redeem my brothers from the curse, and may they too not remember this episode. Now regarding me, I am fully aware that you are capable of making possible even the impossible. That is why I committed this awful act. But that alone is not enough to prevent me from being tainted by sin. Therefore, protect me from the sin of matricide." When Parashurama asked for the above boons, Jamadagni was amazed. "O son, not only are you obedient to my words, instantly executing my command without hesitation, I am also proud of the speed of your hands. But I did not know that your intellect was even faster. Within short moments, you understood the whole situation. You are indeed very wise. I see why you have asked for forgetfulness. Not only this, only after seeking boons for others, you have wished that sin should not stain you. Therefore, joy is heightened by your selflessness. My son, in addition to granting your boons, I bless you with unyielding power and long life." From then onwards, the lives of Jamadagni and his family continued peacefully and undisturbed until Kartaveeryarjuna arrived in the hermitage of Jamadagni. The events in the hermitage of Jamadagni made the people around scared of Parashurama and Jamadagni. Thus, their enemies watched carefully and waited until Parashurama would be absent from the ashram. One day, several hundred Kshatriya youths entered the ashram of Jamadagni and laid siege. Sage Jamadagni, seated in a corner of the ashram, was in deep samadhi. The perverted youths ransacked the ashram and tortured its inmates. Not enough with that, they tortured Rishi Jamadagni, though he was in samadhi. Renuka Devi begged them not to harm her husband, and the inmates also beseeched them with tears in their eyes, yet the wicked men did not stop. Afraid that they would kill her husband and hoping that her youngest son could hurry there to protect them, Renuka Devi shouted, "Rama! Oh Rama!" But this cry was never heard by Rama. Jamadagni, sinless and very absorbed in absolute penance and peace, was unaware of all these happenings even when his head was severed mercilessly. The youths, fearing that it was time for Rama to come, fled after this barbarous act, shouting their war cries. When Rama finally arrived, the evil men had already disappeared from the sight. The ashram was drowned in grief and sorrow. The green huts of the ashram and the platforms had been leveled with the ground. The sacrificial fires were put out and the fire pits destroyed. Renuka Devi was sorrow incarnate. The other residents of the ashram found no way to calm Renuka Devi, who was collecting the head and the other parts of her husband's body lying in a pool of blood. While the Munis stood like statues, Parashurama saw only desolation and despair everywhere. Curse upon my life! Of no use is my living any more. Because of my knowledge of archery, such a deplorable fate has overtaken my father. Of what good is my discipleship with Lord Parameshwara himself? All my achievements have only aided the death of my father. Full of despair and cursing himself, Parashurama began to weep like a child. The elders of the ashram who tried to console him joined him in wailing. But Parashurama's sorrow turned into a terrible fury. His lips began to quiver, his teeth were clenched, and his face turned mad with anger. Shame upon me! Should I behave like a helpless coward? He roared like a lion. Seeing the wrathful form of Parashurama, the Brahmin residents and his brothers trembled as they foresaw the holocaust that would follow. O Rama, this violence does not befit Brahmins. They pleaded with tears in their eyes. But filled with anger, Parashurama rushed towards the city of Mahishmati and mercilessly killed all the Kshatriyas just as they were celebrating their victory. When he did not find any more Kshatriyas in the city, he returned to the ashram, but the fire of revenge was not quenched. In the ashram, he saw the bloody pool and the corpse of his father, for whose death he held himself responsible, and he saw grieving mother near the dead body. In a frenzy, in the presence of hermits and the residents of the ashram, he took a vow, in a voice resounding like thunder. I have learned that my mother Renuka Devi cried for me 21 times. Even after hearing my name, the wicked Kshatriyas did not stop. Therefore, I shall go round the earth 21 times and search for the Kshatriyas wherever they may be and hack their bodies to pieces. It is not a sin to destroy sinners. The residents of the ashram shivered when they heard Parashurama's vow, but his mother Renuka Devi dried her tears and, placing her hand on his shoulder, said, O Rama, my dear son, let it be thus, but perform the obsequies for your father first and then set out to fulfill your vow. She patted her son and tried to console him. Parashurama looked into her serene and calm face and thought, yes, I must abide by her words. She is my mother. She is not refusing my vow. Obeying her words shall be my first duty. The mother continued, Rama, listen to my words. Funeral rites should not be performed in a devastated place. Bring a ridgepole, and on one end place the corpse of your dear father, and on the other seat me, a living corpse. Then proceed towards the southwest direction until a voice bids you to stop. There you will meet an extraordinary master. According to his advice, you shall perform the funeral rites for both of us. Parashurama made all the arrangements and set out with his brothers and a few companions from the ashram. The Master. The journey took them through many cities, villages, towns, sacred rivers, forests, mountains and valleys. Everyone was waiting with great attention for the moment when the voice of the unseen would be heard. Parashurama walked fast, carrying his mother, absorbed in deep meditation, and the corpse of his father. They were passing through the ranges of Sahyadri hills, where they reached a village called Amalaka. As they moved on there appeared a hermitage in the distance. There a serene voice was heard saying, "Stop! Stop!" They looked in all directions but could not see anyone. Parashurama walked on. The same voice again said, "Stop!" It was now clear to all that it was the voice they had waited for. Parashurama looked at his mother, seated in a perfect meditative state. Her face was bright and serenely peaceful. From her lips came the words, as though from another world, "My son, what you see there is the supremely sacred Dattatreya ashram. Was not your father telling you about that great soul? Go to him forthwith and pray to him. Accept him as your preceptor. Perform the funeral rites as he orders. Here you see the sacred Amalaka tree in which reside the aspects of Brahma and Vishnu. Sit under this tree and meditate on your father, who is of the form of Lord Shiva. This tree then will assume the aspect of the Trinity. It is most dear to Dattatreya. Worship it and you will receive his grace soon." Having followed the instructions of his mother, Parashurama seated her under the Amalaka tree and he himself entered the ashram. There he saw a man who was completely intoxicated. He was nearly naked and was drinking and enjoying the company of a woman in an indecent way. Parashurama, who possessed a keen intellect, grasped the situation immediately and remembered the characteristic behavior of Lord Dattatreya, which his father used to describe, and thus recognized Lord Dattatreya. He fell at the feet of the Lord and said, "O ocean of mercy, I have come here with the corpse of my father to perform the funeral rites. Please guide me in the proper way and bless me by accepting to be my preceptor." The Lord shook his head and said, "Hey, crazy Brahmin, I do not know any religion or irreligion. As you saw, we do things our own way. Come on, leave me alone and my frivolous lady and get out." Devout Parashurama was not deceived by this act well put on by the Lord and said, "O Lord, there is no dharma unknown to you. You are the supreme Guru who blesses the Munis and Devatas with jnana and vijnana. You are indeed the teacher of the world. You are the Lord of Yoga. This is well known to the rishis. I have no doubt about it." Parashurama spoke with humility and bowed again and again with folded hands. The Lord laughed loudly and said, "Oh, you Brahmins are mad. Can you not see that I am drunk and have taken off my clothes? First tell me who should wear clothes and why. I am not concerned with others. I do not put on clothes. I drink and have fun, that's all." Turning towards the damsel, the Lord said, "Ah, come here, sit on my lap." Then looking at Parashurama, he said, "You Brahmins run away on seeing me and take a dip in the Ganges. You dare to address me as a guru? Are you perhaps also drunk like me?" The Lord continued asking like this, but Parashurama did not waver. In a steady voice he said, "Whatever be your outer forms, and however misleading they may be, you are the Lord. I have no doubt at all. My mother too has told me likewise. She is waiting to see that I conduct my father's funeral according to your directions." On hearing this, the Lord was startled and said, "What? Has your mother come here?" The Lord got up and his ugly form disappeared, while a spiritually resplendent form in ochre robes appeared. The lady and the liquor pots had also vanished. This did not surprise Parashurama at all. Lord Dattatreya, in his enrapturing form, approached Renuka Devi, and with folded hands he bowed to her and extolled her thus: "O Mother Renuka, you alone are the most worthy of worship. You are Sharvani, you are the indweller in the hearts of all, yet you are not accessible even to great yogis. You are the boat for all who want to cross the great ocean of birth and death called samsara. Sureshwari, you alone are the true one in all the three worlds. You are Ekavira, ever victorious. You are one without a second. You shine in a blissful form. Prostrations to you." When the Lord was praising her thus, Renuka Devi remained silent. Parashurama, who was witnessing the scene, was surprised and could not understand what was happening. After these praises, the Lord offered obeisance to the corpse of Jamadagni and said, "Child, first bathe in all the sacred rivers and then come back to me." Parashurama raised his bow and shot an arrow consecrated with a mantra towards Sahyadri hills. A huge hole appeared in the mountain from which flowed the sacred waters of the river Ganga, Yamuna, Saraswati, Krishna, Godavari, Narmada, Tungabhadra, Sindhu and Brahmaputra. Parashurama had his bath in this confluence of rivers and came back to the Lord, who was immensely pleased with the miraculous feat of Parashurama. The obsequies. As instructed by Lord Dattatreya, Parashurama prepared the sacrificial fire and got ready to perform the last rites according to the scriptures. Then Renuka Devi adorned herself with ornaments and, calling both Dattatreya and Parashurama, said, "My dear blessed children, I am leaving for our heavenly abode soon with my husband." These words deeply moved Parashurama and made him sad. Seeing his condition, the mother said lovingly, "Rama, revere your Guru, the Devatas and Brahmins. Now fulfill your sacred vow." Then without delay Mother Renuka Devi entered the funeral pyre. Under the guidance of Lord Datta, Parashurama and his brothers performed the obsequies for both their parents, who witnessed them in radiant forms from their heavenly abode. The sons prayed to them and were blessed by them. Afterwards, they worshipped Acharya Lord Dattatreya and bid farewell to the Brahmins with whom Parashurama sent back his brothers. Parashurama recollected his mother's words on parting, and filled with rage he set out to fulfill his vow. He went round the globe 21 times and destroyed each and every member of the warrior class, and until the world was devoid of Kshatriyas. Only then his heart became peaceful. Parashurama washed his lethal weapons in the river Pranita, and standing on the bank reviewed all that had happened. He thought, "I have performed a dharmic act only, and despite having had ablutions in the Pranita river, something which has not been washed away is left in me." He pondered about what to do in the future and decided to consult Lord Dattatreya, and thereby his heart became lighter. On his way to the Datta ashram, again Renuka Devi and Jamadagni appeared before him in their divine forms and said, "Rama, we are pleased by the fulfillment of your vow. However, the sin which follows violence has tainted you. Therefore, you should perform a suitable fire sacrifice to overcome the ill effects of your deed. Parashurama was wondering how he, a brahmachari, could perform a sacrifice. Then his mother said, "Ask Lord Dattatreya to be your guru and to help you. He will arrange everything for you. Do not worry about a brahmachari performing a sacrifice. You can keep a golden doll in the place of a wife. Such a procedure is common practice. Invite great sages such as Kashyapa for the place of Ritviks and reward the Brahmins amply. Conduct this fire sacrifice in a grand manner." All of Parashurama's doubts were cleared and he was relieved. He offered appropriate worship to the parents, after which they disappeared. Dissolution of sins. Parashurama was overcome by repentance and remorse. Even his parents who had appeared before him had confirmed that sin was attached to him. He doubted whether the Lord would accept a sinner like him as a disciple. The Lord's ashram was called Ekavira Ashram, and all those who lived there were peace-loving Maharshis. Parashurama thought to himself, "How disgusted will they be when they see a perpetrator of violence like me?" He did not want to show his face full of rajas, anger, violence, and cruelty to the ashramites who were peace-loving and non-violent and always wished the good of all beings and were full of sattva. When he reached the Datta ashram, he saw Datta surrounded by devatas, siddhas, munis, brahmins, and devotees. His mind was filled with doubts, and he asked himself what he should do now. If he returned, what assurance was there he could see him again? But would he accept to be my guru for a sinner like me? Yet I should comply with the direction of my parents. If I leave the Lord now after so much effort, I would insult my parents. It would also be an insult to the Guru. Whatever may happen, I must have his darshan. With fear and anxiety, Parashurama desperately approached the Lord and fell at his feet. On seeing him, Lord Dattatreya got up from his seat and taking Parashurama's hands with pleasure, he drew him towards himself and seated him by his side. This sign of affection deepened Parashurama's despair. He tried to conceal it and wanted to praise the Lord, but the words stuck in his throat. But the Lord, who understood his feelings, looked with an enticing smile at him and said, "Rama, who do you think you are? You are not an ordinary human being. You are Vishnu himself. You are Vishnu. You are incarnated to destroy the wicked in this world. Do you not remember? If not Vishnu, who else could have killed Kartaveerya single-handed? Also, how could you kill all the Kshatriyas on the face of the earth without any effort? You are none else than Vishnu." Hearing this, Parashurama, with his hands folded, prayed, "O Lord, why do you subject me to such severe tests? Who am I? Who is Vishnu? It was God's will that enabled me to kill the Kshatriyas. Lord, do not confuse me. I am a servant to you, my Guru, and a servant of all the Devatas and Brahmins. I have to perform a great sacrifice to ward off the sins and to appease the Devarshis and the Mains. Without your help, it cannot be done. No one else is capable of this. Therefore, I have come to you to pray for your help. Please accept to be the Acharya for my yajna. which I must perform as directed by my parents, and bless me." Thus speaking, Parashurama circumambulated the Lord and prostrated. Lord Dattatreya smiled full of kindness and mercy and said, "If that is all you want, let it be as you wish." Parashurama was elated and constructed an extraordinary Yajnashala on the Sahyadri hill. Great sages such as Kashyapa were appointed as chief priests and commenced the sacrifice scrupulously. Can anything be lacking in a sacrifice performed by Parashurama, who conquered the earth by annihilating the Kshatriyas? Gifts of food, gifts of gold, and others flowed like the water of the river Ganga, with the result that in a short time there was a shortage of persons to receive the gifts. The sages considered themselves blessed to take part in a sacrifice in which Lord Datta participated as Acharya. Even celestial beings considered it their good fortune and came to receive the sacred offerings. Due to Parashurama's merit, all the men assembled there could see the Devatas. In addition to the rishis, many men of wisdom attended the sacrifice. All of them surrounded Lord Dattatreya and carefully listened to his instructions. The Maharshis were all well versed in the scriptures and rituals, but Lord Datta did not abide by or stick to any rules nor codes of ritualistic conduct. These learned men were amazed by this but would not leave him. Among them was a young, learned, devoted, and polite ascetic by the name of Pingalanaga, who had been given a small role in the sacrificial ritual. To Pingalanaga, who watched with excitement, everything seemed rather strange. The performer was a bachelor. As though it was not enough, the conductor was an ascetic. And what kind of an ascetic was he? This ascetic had no traditional danda, yogic stick, and kamandala, water pot. He was not wearing the ochre robes. Pingalanaga thought to himself, "Look at his tuft of hair and long beard. He does not seem to be reciting properly this pranava mantra even." He had not fully completed his rituals for the day when he was already in the company of beautiful damsels and cracking jokes. He pets the dogs and hugs them. What behavior is this? There are so many aged munis and authors of smritis here, but no one has the courage to say anything about it. On the contrary, they worship his feet and beg for his grace. Perhaps all these old ascetics have fallen into his trap. This much is certain, that there is some secret which an ignorant person does not understand. But they are no fools. If I do not understand this, I should ask others about it. Without doing so, I should not entertain critical thoughts. But should I ask? I better ask him directly. Then the matter will become clear. Pingalanaga waited for a suitable opportunity, and then one day, when the Lord was seated under a Krishnamalaka tree, Pingalanaga approached him reverentially. He fell at his feet, and then, with folded hands, he said, "Sir, I have a doubt to be cleared. Please help me." Lord Datta consented and beckoned him to sit down. With humility, Pingalanaga said, "Please pardon my boldness and correct me if I make a mistake. All have said that the Vedas and other scriptures are the supreme authority. No one denies this. According to them, there are 4 classes of people and 4 stages of life. This constitutes dharma. All the ascetics at the sacrifice are followers of this sacred code of dharmic conduct and are preaching the same. Sir, your conduct, however, is quite the opposite. Here you are guiding the sacrifice, and at the same time you resort to drinking. In addition, rumors are that a damsel is staying with you in your room. You do not seem to respect the conventions of dharma, and you do not follow them. Yet, all the sages worship you as a guru. All this is very confusing to me. I feel there is a subtle dharma which the ignorant do not know. Please explain this to me. To which class and stage of life do you belong, and which tradition? Who is your guru, and what have you achieved by this conduct? Why have you taken up this path, forsaking the one followed by everybody else? Sir, please dispel my doubts. Pingalanaga begged in great reverence. The Lord listened to the many questions and in a serious tone said, O Pingalanaga, what you say is true. There are 4 classes and 4 stages. The Veda alone is the authority. There is no authority greater than that. But the Vedas are infinite. Mine is the 5th stage of life. This is also authorized by the Vedas. It is the 5th stage where one sees, without distinction, the entire universe of sentient beings and insentient objects as one's own self. He who has conquered the 6 foes and transcended the dualities, he who sees his self in all, is in this 5th stage. Now tell me, can you find this in the aforementioned 4 stages? I know you cannot. Do not feel ashamed about it. Knowers of Brahman alone can understand it. The sacred Vedamata has added this 5th stage for those beyond the 4 stages. Pingalanaga, those who neither know the truth nor have knowledge of truth from the knowers, and those with little insight or too much book knowledge, ridicule me and go to the nether worlds. Unlike them, you are trying to know the truth with great faith and sincerity. Therefore, your karma will bear fruit and your mind will become pure. Then you will understand the truth, and you will yourself enter this stage. This stage can neither be given nor taken. Pingalanaga, when you attain that stage, you can also live like me. But in the meanwhile, you should not imitate me. Whosoever does so goes to eternal hell. No one should compare himself with me. I drink toddy or molten metal. At one moment, I enjoy myself with a woman. The next moment, dance on burning embers in the fire pit. I hug the dogs here, and at the same time, I reach the orbit of the sun. Those who want to imitate me should first prove they can do all this too. Pingalanaga, I am revealing these secrets out of my love for you. Sometimes I act and look disgusting. Only great yogis and wise men know that it is just an appearance. I act like this to test the devotion of devotees, and at other times in order to ward off evil affecting my devotees. So do not be deluded by that. Just perform all virtuous acts scrupulously as instructed by your Guru and as it is done by rishis. Then you will realize the truth and you will yourself understand the 5th stage. Then the Lord placed his right palm on the head of Pingalanaga, and bliss entered his whole being. He praised the Lord in various ways, containing the essence of the whole Vedanta. Pingalanaga said, overjoyed, O Lord, I know now that Lord Dattatreya is the truth. He is the Lord. He is the ruler. You are the Sadguru. You are Shiva. I have sought refuge in you. Please do not take as an offense what I have said out of ignorance. You are my goal. Save me from this terrible serpent of samsara. Absorb me in you. Moved by the devotion of Pingalanaga, the Lord manifested in the form of Shiva and, opening his mouth wide, told Pingalanaga to come into him. Joyfully Pingalanaga entered the Lord without hesitation, where he assumed the form of a linga and settled there permanently. Since then, that place has acquired greatness and fame and is even now considered as the abode of Shiva. The Lord declared that devotees who bathe in Padmatirtha, give away gifts, perform the ceremonies of going round the Shivalinga and the Krishna Amalaka tree will not be born again. Thus, Pingalanaga, the real seeker, was blessed by the Lord. After this miracle, the Lord assumed his original form and resumed the yajna supervision. Renuka Sandhya. The details of his extraordinary sacrifice were new even to the experts of the 4 Vedas. The Lord himself gave the instructions on how and what had to be done. When asked, the Lord would say, "This is Renuka Yaga." The Munis kept quiet for some time, thinking that it was named after Parashurama's mother. But as the sacrifice progressed, Lord Datta was uttering frequently, "Ekavira, Renuka, Jaganmata." Hearing this repeated again and again, doubts arose in the minds of sages. Renuka may not be the name of any person. Some esoteric truth may be hidden in this word. Parashurama, who was engaged in the rituals, was also moved by this word Renuka. But he had forgotten the same during the fulfillment of his vow. He kept quiet as he was observing silence and offering prayers mentally. One day the sages approached the Lord and asked, "O Lord, you chant the name of Renuka always. You say Renuka Yaga. What is meant by this name? What is its essence? Please tell us the mystery of Renuka." Then the Lord called Parashurama and said, "Rama, you are unequaled in valor. You have slain Kartaveerya, who had conquered both the Devatas and the demons. You are the master of the 3 worlds. There is no equal to you in intelligence. You are the direct disciple of Lord Parameshwara himself. I have heard that the Lord of Ganas taught you the essence of the self. Being so great, you should know the reality of the truth incarnated as your mother Renuka. Therefore, you can describe it to me. I permit you to break your silence and do speak." Parashurama said, "O Lord, I have believed Renuka to be my mother, who has given birth to me. Beyond that, I know nothing. Please bless us by telling us all about her." The Lord smiled and said, "Your mother Renuka has a gross body and a subtle body. These are said to be with form and without form by the wise. These mountains, rivers, valleys, forests, worlds, and the universe with its movable and immovable forms all form the gross body of your mother, Mata Renuka, Mother Ekavira. But her subtle form is Parabrahman. Listen to me carefully. Rama, for a divine cause, she incarnated as your mother with the name Renuka. She is now back in her original state after her work was over. During her physical appearance, she rested under the Amalaka tree and hence the spot is sacred. That is Renukalaya, her temple. The lake she bathed in is called Matratirtha. It is itself Renukatirtha. You shot an arrow under my command and split the Sahyadri range and made this a Sarvatirtha. After your work was finished, you rested under this tree, as you were told by your mother. As the Lord spoke of Renuka Devi, she appeared instantly under the tree and was worshipped by Lord Datta and the other great sages. The sages watched with wonder the extraordinary way of worship and overwhelming devotion of the Lord towards Renuka Devi. The Lord performed a Panchamrita Abhisheka to Renuka Devi by getting milk and curds from the ocean of milk, ghee from the ocean of ghee, and honey and sugar from the Krishna Amalaka tree. Then he invoked the presiding devatas of all the tirthas and performed Abhisheka with the water of those holy tirthas. He offered 64 services enjoined by the scriptures and concluded the great worship with Harati. As the sages were absorbed in meditation, the Lord suddenly disappeared. Instant commotion started among all the celestial beings, ascetics, scholars, and others. They used their supernatural powers to search for him in all the 3 worlds, but the Lord could not be found anywhere. Surprise turned into anxiety. Whatever he is doing, and in whatever state he may be now, the Lord was thinking of Renuka only. Therefore, he must have merged in the Renuka principle. Thus thought the angels. What do we know about Renuka Tattva? Have we sufficiently understood the heart of Lord Datta himself? Perhaps he is enveloped by the resplendence of Renuka, or has the Lord himself disappeared in the nether worlds for the sake of Renuka? Thought the sages. Why should we assume that he has gone anywhere? He has made himself invisible to observe our doings in his absence. Thus thought Siddhas. It is better for us to keep quiet. Who can say when he will reappear with that nude lady beside him? Thought the Vidyadharas. Why all this confusion? Even Maya is under his control. He could be even amidst us here, covering himself up with the ignorant as a sport, said the Charanas. While assumptions were being uttered in accord with their inclinations, the Lord suddenly reappeared with a smile. The anxiety turned into joy and happiness. All of them gathered round the Lord. Some danced in joy, some prostrated to him, some praised him, while some sages continued to meditate upon him. Then they asked, O Lord, you have disappeared from the sight of even great seers. Where have you been? No one else is capable of disappearing completely. All of us together could not find out where you had gone. O Lord, please tell us. The Lord smiled and said, I had to be absent from this great sacrifice for some time to perform my evening Sandhya prayers. The moment of Sandhya had approached, so I had to leave to offer oblations without delay. I visited Sandhya Devi, finished the prayers, and returned. It was another surprise for the sages. They thought, we are performing Sandhya prayer regularly for 3 times every day. He says that he visited Sandhya Devi and returned. But we have performed the evening Sandhya here alone. Their doubts could not be cleared. So, again they asked the Lord, O Lord, what is your Sandhya prayer like? What is the appropriate time for it? What is the principle of this Sandhya? Which is the place and how does one get there? Please, tell us the details. The Lord said in a serious tone, O learned ones, Yogeshwari Renuka Devi, who ever resides in the pure hearts of all yogis, is herself Sandhya Devi. She alone is worthy of worship. I came back after offering prayers to her. Being present as the middle of all matter and as the modifications of mind, she is called Sandhya. As she shines between all meeting points of time, she is to be prayed to at all times, while sitting, standing, sleeping, eating, and while drinking, without any distinctions such as now and then. She is to be worshipped. Great sages are doing so. Hearing these words, the sages and munis looked at each other in amazement. Then the elders among them, understanding the meaning with a view to having the ignorant blessed with knowledge, said to the Lord, O Lord, what you say is interesting indeed, but men like us, suffering from worldly attachments and physical ailments, can hardly worship Sandhya even for a short while a day. If you tell us to perform Sandhya at all times and in all states, how is that possible? The Lord replied, O sages, absolute time, Kala, is indivisible. For the convenience of human beings, time is divided into aeons, years, months, days, minutes, and seconds. Compassionate Sandhya Devi has divided herself for important middle periods. She should be specially invoked in the months of Chaitra, spring, and Ashadha, summer, and Kartika, winter. She should be invariably worshipped punctually every day 3 times, at dawn, noon, and dusk. All the good deeds of those who do not perform Sandhya as prescribed for their classes and stages will become fruitless. Therefore, every day and during the 3 periods, Sandhya should be performed regularly and punctually. Devi resides as Mahakali in Idanadi, as Mahalakshmi in Pingalanadi, and as Ekavira in Sushumna Nadi in our body. Any person who prays to her during all the 3 periods by this method of yoga, combining the 3 nadis, will be blessed with her revelation. So, you should do likewise. Thus, instructing the ascetics about the Sandhya Renuka Tattva, the Lord, announcing that it was yajna time, proceeded to the place of sacrifice to attend to the ritual duties. The sages reflected over the words of the Lord while they rested under the sacred Amalaka tree for some time. Parashurama's mind was now free from anger and agitation, as his sin had been destroyed by the sacrifice performed in repentance. Sitting under the Amalaka tree, he contemplated the Renuka Tattva. In a corner of his mind there lurked an inexpressible restlessness. It increased as his upasana progressed. He became anxious due to this inexplicable and unbearable state of mind. In that condition, Parashurama wandered around restlessly in the area of Sahyadri hills. One day, while wandering in the forest, he encountered a great Avadhoota called Samvartaka, who was in a trance-like state. Parashurama was struck by the flood of bliss flowing not only from his face but from every atom in his body. Sir, what is the secret of your infinite bliss? What should I do to obtain such a blissful state? Parashurama asked politely after prostrating to him. Son, seek refuge at the sacred feet of Lord Dattatreya, said the Avadhoota with a compassionate smile. As he heard this advice, his heart opened up and he thought, what a fool am I not to have done so earlier. And right away he returned to the ashram and fell at the feet of the Lord, who was sitting in a pleasant mood, and sought refuge, saying, O Lord, dispel this restlessness in me, grant me jnana, and bless me with infinite bliss, I beg you. Bestowing a loving look on him, Lord Datta said, My son, you have performed severe penance, and your mind is now purified to ask for this. I was waiting for this moment. Thus, the Lord taught Parashurama the knowledge of the self and granted him an enlightening experience of it. This great knowledge of the self is known as Tripura Rahasya, which is considered as a sacred text of supreme knowledge. Through Datta's grace, Parashurama became a realized jnani and left for the Mahendra mountains and resided there. This is how Sadguru Dattatreya blessed Kartaveeryarjuna and Parashurama equally with what each of them had wanted, and ultimately granted eternal peace to both. Lord Dattatreya was the incarnation of Narayana, the creator, sustainer, and destroyer. Numerous statements in the scriptures substantiate this. Vishnu has incarnated in many forms, but to give himself away as a gift is unique to Dattatreya. Puranas say that it is his vow that whatever is offered to him in love and devotion, even if it be a drop of water, a tulasi leaf, or a fruit, he accepts it as he is easily accessible through devotion. Even a little bit will please the Lord immensely, and he will give more than what the devotee asks for. Hence, among all the incarnations, the incarnation of Dattatreya is unique and is the highest.
Sadguru Stavam.
Siddhi Buddhi Mahayoga Varaniyo Ganadhipaha Yasvayam Sachchidanandam Sadgurum Tam Namamyaham Yasya Dattatreya Bhavo Bhakta Namatmadanataha Suchate Sachchidanandam Sadgurum Tam Namamyaham Yoga Jyotis Samuddiktam Jaya Lakshmi Nrisimhayo Advayam Sachchidanandam Sadgurum Tam Namamyaham Yoga Vidya Chitrabhanum Chitrabhanu Sharadbhavam Jnanadam Sachchidanandam Sadgurum Tam Namamyaham Ganesha Homerkadine Nityam Shri Chakra Pujane Dikshitam Sachchidanandam Sadgurum Tam Namamyaham Agastya Muni Sankranta Nana Vaidya Durandharam Bhavagram Sachchidanandam Sadgurum Tam Namamyaham Vadyodanchad Divyanama Sankirtana Kalanidhim Nadabhim Sachchidanandam Sadgurum Tam Namamyaham Datta Peethadhipam Dharma Rakshanopaya Bandhuram Satkavim Sachchidanandam Sadgurum Tam Namamyaham Vidhuta Bhakta Sammoham Avadhootam Jagadgurum Swashrayam Sachchidanandam Sadgurum Tam Namamyaham Sadhutvam Bhakti Maishwaryam Dhanam Yogamarogatam Sanmatim Jnanamanandam Sadguru Stavato Labhet Sri Ganeshaya Namaha Sri Saraswatyai Namaha Sri Padavallabha Narasimha Saraswati Sri Guru Dattatreya Namaha Kayena vacha manasendriyaiva buddhyatmana va prakrite svabhavat karomi yadya sakalam parasmai Sri Sachchidananda pade payami.